The email subject line screamed, "Family meeting urgent." My stomach clenched. Whenever the words family meeting appeared in my inbox, it translated to, "Emma, we're worried about you and your life choices," delivered with a heaping side of unsolicited advice. My name is Emma Smith, and until recently my life had been a carefully orchestrated symphony of well-intentioned failures. I'd always been the dreamer in a family of pragmatists. Dad, a retired accountant, lived and breathed spreadsheets. Mom, a former teacher, believed in structure and predictable outcomes. My brother, Tom, followed in their footsteps, securing a stable job in finance right out of college. And me? I chased butterflies. I'd started 3 businesses in the last 5 years. A hand-knitted sweater company, turns out. No one wants a sweater that costs $300 and sheds like a husky. A gourmet dog biscuit bakery. Apparently, artisanal dog biscuits aren't as popular as regular, cheap dog biscuits. And now Bloom, an online platform connecting local artists with businesses looking for unique artwork. Bloom was struggling. Beautifully, painstakingly, expensively struggling. I believed in it. I truly did. I envisioned local cafes adorned with vibrant paintings from emerging artists, offices filled with handcrafted sculptures, and a thriving community of creatives finally getting the recognition and payment they deserved. But vision doesn't pay the bills. Marketing costs were astronomical, artists needed upfront guarantees, and businesses were hesitant to gamble on unknown talent. I'd sunk my savings, taken out a small business loan, and was now living on ramen noodles and the sheer force of my stubbornness. So when the urgent email arrived, I knew what was coming. An intervention. An honest conversation about my unrealistic career aspirations. A gentle or not-so-gentle nudge towards a stable job in accounting. I sighed, brewed a strong cup of coffee, and braced myself. The meeting was scheduled for Sunday at 2 p.m. at my parents' meticulously decorated suburban home. The floral arrangements were always perfectly symmetrical, the furniture always precisely positioned. It was a sanctuary of order, the polar opposite of my chaotic, paint-splattered apartment. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Tom's sensible sedan already parked. He probably brought a PowerPoint presentation outlining the pros and cons of different career paths. I could practically hear the click of the projector. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with concern. Mom fussed over me, offering me a plate of freshly baked cookies, which I politely declined, acutely aware of my ramen noodle budget. Dad sat in his usual armchair, his brow furrowed. Tom perched on the edge of the sofa, his laptop open. "Emma, honey, we're worried about you," Mom began, her voice laced with maternal anxiety. "Bloom it." "Emma, honey, we're worried about you," Mom began, her voice laced with maternal anxiety. "Bloom, it doesn't seem to be going very well." "We've been looking at the numbers, Em," Dad added, his voice gentle but firm. "And frankly, they're not sustainable. You're bleeding money." I braced myself. Here it comes. The lecture. The inevitable "I told you so." "I know, Dad," I said, trying to sound confident. "But I'm working on it. I'm exploring new marketing strategies, reaching out to investors." "Investors?" Tom scoffed, closing his laptop with a snap. "Emma, no one is going to invest in a company that's hemorrhaging cash. You need a realistic plan." "And what's the realistic plan, Tom?" I asked, my voice a little sharper than I intended. "Another soulless job crunching numbers in a cubicle? Is that what you want for me?" "It's about security, Emma," he countered. "It's about having a roof over your head and food on the table. It's about not living on ramen noodles." "I'm not afraid of ramen noodles," I retorted. "I'm afraid of living a life I don't believe in." The argument escalated, the familiar script playing out like a well-rehearsed play. They expressed their concerns, I defended my choices, and the whole thing threatened to devolve into a shouting match. "Emma, please," Mom pleaded, her eyes glistening with tears. "We just want you to be happy. And secure. Is that so wrong?" I looked at their faces, etched with worry and love. They genuinely cared. They just couldn't understand. They couldn't grasp the burning desire that fueled my ambition, the unwavering belief that I could create something meaningful. "I know you do, Mom," I said softly, my anger subsiding. "And I appreciate it. But this is my life. And I need to figure it out on my own." "But what if you fail, Emma?" Dad asked, his voice laced with concern. "What if you lose everything?" "Then I'll start again," I said, meeting his gaze. "I'll learn from my mistakes and I'll keep trying." Because that's what I do. The room fell silent. They looked at me, their faces a mix of exasperation and reluctant admiration. They still didn't understand, but maybe, just maybe, they were starting to accept. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was an email notification. I glanced at the sender, Forbes. My heart skipped a beat. I'd submitted a profile of Bloom to their up-and-coming startups section a few weeks ago, but I'd long since dismissed it as a pipe dream. Hold on a second, I said, my voice trembling. I need to check this email. I opened the email, my fingers shaking. The subject line read, Bloom, revolutionizing the art world. I scrolled through the article, my eyes widening with each paragraph. It was glowing. They highlighted Bloom's innovative approach, its impact on the local art scene, and its potential for growth. They even mentioned my ramen noodle budget, framing it as a testament to my dedication. What is it, Emma? Mom asked, her voice filled with curiosity. It's Forbes, I stammered, holding up my phone. They wrote an article about Bloom. The room erupted. Tom grabbed my phone and started reading, his eyes scanning the text. Dad leaned over his shoulder, his brow furrowed in concentration. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The silence that followed was deafening. They were no longer looking at me with concern, but with something akin to awe. This is amazing, Emma, Tom said, finally breaking the silence. They're calling you a visionary. And they mentioned the partnerships you've built with local businesses, Dad added, his voice filled with pride. That's excellent. Mom squeezed my hand, her eyes sparkling with tears. I always knew you could do it, honey, she said, her voice choked with emotion. I always knew you were special. The transformation was remarkable. Suddenly, my risky venture was innovative. My unrealistic dreams were ambitious. My ramen noodle budget was resourceful. The rest of the afternoon was a whirlwind of excitement. We celebrated with champagne, which I usually couldn't afford, strategized about how to leverage the Forbes article, and even discussed potential expansion plans. The family meeting had turned into a victory celebration. The article went viral. Within days, Bloom's website traffic skyrocketed. Inquiries poured in from businesses wanting to partner with us, and artists clamored to join our platform. Investors who had previously ignored my emails were now calling, eager to get a piece of the action. Bloom was no longer struggling. It was thriving. The Forbes article didn't magically solve all my problems. There were still challenges to overcome, decisions to make, and fires to put out. But it did something more profound. It validated my vision. It silenced the doubts. And it showed my family that I wasn't just chasing butterflies. I was building something real. A few weeks later, I was sitting in my parents' living room again, but this time the atmosphere was different. The concern had been replaced with pride, the unsolicited advice with genuine support. So, Emma, Dad said, leaning back in his armchair, a thoughtful expression on his face. What's next for Bloom? I smiled, took a sip of my champagne, and told them my plans. This time they listened. Really listened. And for the first time, I felt like they understood. They finally saw the value in my unconventional path, the passion that drove me, and the potential that I always knew was there. The Forbes article hadn't just changed my business, it had changed my relationship with my family. It had bridged the gap between their pragmatism and my idealism, proving that sometimes, the riskiest path is the one that leads to the greatest reward. I still eat ramen noodles occasionally. It's a reminder of how far I've come, and a reminder to never give up on my dreams. And every time I see a Forbes article, I smile, knowing that sometimes, all it takes is a little validation to turn a failed business into a success story, and a family meeting into a celebration. Because sometimes, the world just needs a little art to bloom.